Humans of the cardboard, welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today we are looking at Power of the Elements yet again. We finally have all of the reveals officially, and so I think we need to look, because we're only about a week and a half from the actual set's release, we need to go in and look at how this is actually going to affect the competitive format. There was a lot of format warping stuff here, from new tier 1 archetypes, new staple side deck cards that will be played in most people's side decks, all the way down to the rogue level, and stuff that could easily top regionals, win regionals on the right day. So we're going all the way down to the rogue level, still talking about that because I think rogue decks do matter in formats, not as much obviously as tier 1 decks, but I want to throw them in there. I think they're relevant enough. So let's get into it. This is one of the best core sets we've had probably since Burst of Destiny, and I'm really pumped. But yeah, starting off here, we're going to look at the new archetypes. First up, we have Splight. I'm sure you've heard plenty of news about Splight. This deck is crazy. It's like a level 2 spam deck where it takes advantage of rank, link, and level 2 monsters. They're very good at playing through interruption. Their engine is actually quite compact and powerful, so they can afford to play 20-ish flex spots for whatever else they think they need to have in their deck to handle the format. And I think that's pretty much about what makes them so good. It's just kind of power creep on by being an engine that's stronger than almost any engine we've seen to this point, that can play a very small, compact 20 card engine and still just be able to play all those kind of just utility cards, whatever they think will work best in the format. Very, very scary. This will be tier 1 out the gate. Next up, we look at Tearlaments. Again, this is another one you've probably heard a good amount about. It's the newest, most broken way to abuse fusion summoning. You don't even need fusion spells. You just need to mill monsters, get them to grave, and you are good to go. Very, very powerful. They have specific weaknesses like Graveyard Hate, but I think they're still solid. They'll be good out the gate. I'm not sure if they'll be tier 1 legit meta, but they'll be good. And then once we get the Ishizu stuff and their support in Darkwing Blast, I think they'll be legit tier 1. No questions asked. So very, very bright future for this deck as well. Next, we move to Vernalizer Fairies, or the Vernasylphs. Interesting archetype. It's earth-based. It does lock you into earth effects for till the end of the turn when you use any of their effects, but they do generically pair with other earth archetypes really, really well. The question is just, can you pair it enough so that the consistency is there and you still have enough payoff? I'm just not sure the right combination is there. But I do think when you read these cards, they do read pretty crazy. So I'm going to mention them here just because I think there is definitely a way where we end up seeing a really good rogue deck that comes out of this archetype, kind of combining with another good earth-based deck and kind of riding that home. But I just felt like they were worth mentioning. So now we moved that's the 3 new archetypes. Well, technically Ghoti's in there too, but Ghoti, guys, I'm going to skip over them here. They kind of feel like Plunder Patrol to me, where the first wave of Plunder Patrol, it almost wasn't even a playable deck. It just didn't feel like it was there. But there were some interesting things, and I think that's where we're at here. I think we need to see the 7 new cards in Darkwing Blast before we can make a real judgment on them at all. And until we see those, I'm going to leave them off the list because I just don't think we're going to see them much in the competitive scene. So moving into the support, you got to start with Exosister. This deck could easily be the second best deck in the game after this set drops. This deck is so crazy. You get so many banishes off this deck, and the addition of Melfy being a crazy starter/extender, and then a crazy trap card like this, where this card could just banish 2. Just banish 2. No big deal. Is absolutely insane. Please keep an eye out for this deck. It is crazy. Next up, we have Mathmech, a circular, really crazy Mathmech card. Not only does it make Mathmechs way better and a legit rogue deck, if not tier 2, and depending on how things go, I know, because we do have such a different format from the OCG, maybe even tier 1. I think it's really that good. And I also love that this is splashable. I think Salamangrates, I think Adignister, I think Code Talkers can all take advantage of this card as just a generic awesome Cybers extender to take advantage of. The Mathmech engine doesn't need to play many bricks. It's just all extenders, and man, they get you so much value. So I would watch out for Cybers decks post-POTE. Next, we move to Rikka. Okay, get that out of here. Rikka support. 2 new cards here. We get the Princess as well as Konkon, or Arrival, or whatever you want to call it. Absolutely insane. This card's more of a pure Rikka build card. I do still think that the Princess could have some utility in stuff like Sun Avalon combo decks, protecting you from hand traps at times like Nib. But I do think overall, the pure build is like a legit control deck you need to keep an eye on. Like this field spell gets you a free set spell or trap every turn from the archetype, and if you ever tribute a Rikka, you can just tribute your opponents instead, like Lair of Darkness. So the deck has so many ways. The deck is tributing a monster every single turn, theirs and their opponents, so they are just tributing all your shit away. Really, really scary deck for sure. Definitely, I think this is a sleeper. I don't see anybody talking about this, but I think they should, because I think this could be a legit powerful rogue deck going forward. Then we get to Melfys. They get like 4 new cards here. The most interesting one is actually a Synchro. They've never really been Synchro based. They also get a Tuner, 2 main deck monsters, and I think another spell, if I'm not mistaken. Pretty interesting stuff. I think it's just nice. And I think one thing to note as well is, depending on how things go with the ban list and stuff, if we see a hit to Totally Awesome, if we see a hit to Swap Frog, and Splight is sitting there like, what's another level 2 engine? Maybe Melfy ends up being one of those engines that they end up trying to make use of. I don't know. I think they would also look at Live Twins as an engine to play them with, but definitely an interesting thing to make note of. And we've also seen like Melfy decks top regionals like before, like pretty easily, so it works. Next up here we have Vendreads, 4 new Vendread cards. I think this big guy is one of the best ones, I think, to mention. But I just think, I know Vendreads aren't great, but I remember seeing that there was a point where like Drytron players were legit like, oh man, the Vendread build is like crazy. So I'm going to mention it here. I don't even know how much synergy it has for stuff for that specific type of build. But I remember reading the support and being like, yeah, the support's pretty good. You know, as long as like it's, you know, easily usable and they can take advantage of the generic ritual support that already exists, like maybe we could see something interesting here. So I'll mention it. Scareclaw, they get the new Link 1 and another quick play spell that's like mid. It's okay. But this card's crazy. It's a Link 1 that searches a field spell that searches your engine. Very, very crazy. It means any Scareclaw monster gets you into your engine. There's a 1-card combo that just gets you to like, not a full-on towers, but a pretty sticky end board monster. And I think like that plus any other Scareclaw extender gets you to also like the Omni Negate, which is pretty cool. So I like where the deck's at. They get also like an Icarus attack type card in the next set as well. So that actually raises up the deck's ability to end on like Powerful Interruption even more. I'll be more interested at that point, but I do think this could be an interesting road deck, especially since it has some Tri-Brigade clout as well, potential, so we'll see. Next up, we move to Punk. Big one here. I've heard a lot of pure Punk players specifically talking about Punk Jam and how this card like is pretty crazy for them. It's also an 8, so like just think about how a lot of their plays facilitate you into like the Chaos Ruler guy. If you can get the Chaos Ruler and then Chaos Ruler kind of gives you a way to extend into this, that's 2 8s. This card gets you insane value, and then maybe you can even just bring back the Chaos Ruler and make like a rank 8 as well. I don't know. I'm sure there's a lot of really cool plays. I like this card because it can search or summon any level 3 psychic from deck. That includes Ghost Ogre, just searches a hand trap, which is really cool, or summoning extenders in the form of, you know, obviously your Punk monsters. Pretty powerful. So I like this card a lot. They also get this field spell. Some people have been telling me this field spell is awesome in the build. I honestly don't know. Otherwise, there's not a lot. The other spells are not impressive at all. So is this card good enough to warrant playing the one little one that searches a spell? Maybe. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I guess it's worth noting. Then we get this. The Morphtronic stuff is actually imported in here. We are not getting the Earth at Legendary Duelist. It's all getting imported into other sets. So the Morphtronic stuff ends up in here. Which is cool. I don't expect Morphtronics to be competitive, but I will note that some of their cards are pretty open-ended. Like this card just says, on normal summon, add a level 1 machine. Not a Morphtronic, just any level 1 machine in the entire game. That could open itself to be, you know, potentially give you routes where you can, you know, get some pretty powerful level 1 machines, and then Machine Dupe seems pretty cool with some of these cards because they are pretty small. But I don't know. I honestly don't know like what we could come up with, but there's already a lot of good machine stuff going on, so I figured it was worth mentioning. Then we get to Reptile support. This is actually a Therian card, but I think this helps Reptiles more than it helps Therian. I've messed around with Ogdoadic. Losing DPE hurt for sure. Well, losing Verte to make DPE hurt for sure. But cards like these definitely help the engine. I still think it pairs with Brave insanely well, and they definitely been looking for some good level 8 extenders. So this guy's actually really good as a level 8 extender, as well as this new level 8 Reptile, who can summon himself a grave if any monster is sent from hand to the grave. which is pretty easy to do in Ogdoadic. A lot of your effects discard, so pretty interesting little extenders. Again, this is probably lower end of Rogue, but I think it is something to make to keep an eye on. There's other Reptile cards we're also waiting to get imported as well. When those do, the deck will get even better, so something to look at. This guy is apparently supposed to be like Adamatia support. He gives you an additional normal for a water or an earth monster, and then from grave, if you control a water and an earth, it can just summon himself back. Luckily, Dragite is a water, so he is just a level 2. I don't even know if he's a tuner, but he's a level 2 body that can just kind of come back onto the field for you. It's a cool little extender for the deck for sure. Then we get to the generic cards. So this is where we finish everything up. Artemis Slay, insane. If you haven't seen my other video talking about all the targets for this card, insane board breaker. This card will be played by a ton of players, especially as we expect Splight and Tearlaments to be two of the better decks in the format for sure. Kurikara, interesting card, kind of fits into that like kaiju lane of like going second cards. I do think it has fundamental problems. Again, I made a video talking entirely about this card. Feel free to check that out because I do think it has like, it's interesting, but it does have some fundamental, one fundamental problem at the end of the day. Splight Elf, definitely a card we have to talk about. I know we talked about Splight, but this card specifically is so generically splashable in so many decks. So Splight Starter and Gigantic Splight lock you into level, rank, and link 2s. This card does not. And it says once per turn, quick effect, reborn any level or rank 2 monster. Can it reborn a link 2 too? I don't know if it can reborn a link 2, but I know for sure it can reborn a level or a rank 2 monster from grave. That's it. No other restriction on it, and it's a quick effect. So even just as an extender, like if you go like Hulk, well, not even Hulk's not even the best example. Whatever, just any play, any deck that just has level 2s in it inherently, you probably just play this card because it means you can link into him, reborn the level 2 anyway, and just get way more resources than you probably deserve off of this card. And on the opponent's turn, like if this is just part of your end board, if they don't clear this card at a very opportune time, you'll be able to just reborn a level 2, and then half the time you'll be able to like go into your next turn with that level 2 still on board, and you're just like, yeah, cool. Really, really interesting card. A lot of decks will be able to use this, even if it's not like an actual Splight deck. This card's pretty cool. Negates monster effects. I believe, is it in hand specifically? I can't remember exactly how this card works. It's like negate something, and then if you want to discard a monster from hand, you can to like summon the monster you negated from your opponent like back to your field. It's interesting, pretty powerful. It kind of reminds me of like a good sub-terror card because it like steals your opponent's monster. You can book them down with Guru and like kind of go in from there. Pretty cool card. Pretty solid counter trap, to be honest. Power Tool Braver Dragon, more so a card that is better in equipped spell decks, obviously, but pretty cool. I mean, it's an interruption in and of itself. It pulls equipped spells straight out of the deck, so I think about stuff like Infernoble. We'll probably try to use this card just to get some of those equips in rotation. Really, really solid. Pretty good card. Garura, Wings of the Resonant Life. This is a generic Super Poly target. I think we will have formats where this card will be played with Super Poly. It's also a pretty decent Artemis Slay, Punishment, Nadir Servant card because it just draws you one, which kind of just gives you good value off of those cards as well. I really like it. Ashura King, rank 3. Monster Negate gives you multiple attacks in a turn. I really like this card. Only downside of it is it does require at least 3 level 3s to make. So it does kind of require a lot, but it is pretty powerful once you get to it. So definitely worth mentioning. Pit Knight early. This is a really interesting card. If a monster it points to activates its effect, you can target any effect monster your opponent controls, make its attack 0, and negate its effects till the end of the turn. Which means if you point this to something like for example, I would say something like Deco Talker Heat Soul, which can just trigger its effect to draw on the opponent's turn whenever. Chain this card, also get a negate out of it while drawing a card. Seems pretty good at the same time, but yeah, pretty interesting. And then if it's destroyed, it actually like comes back on the end of the turn, which is pretty cool. So honestly, a pretty decent generic link. Takes any 2 effect monsters. It is a cyber, so that has other synergies as well. I actually like this card for sure. Grand Tusk Dragon. This card's crazy. If it is, I think it's normal or special summoned. Obviously, it's level 8, so we're not trying to normal summon it by tributing 2. But if it's special summoned, like off of Heavenly Spheres, Target 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy them. That's mainly it. It like just playing this card, albeit a brick in your deck, it turns spheres into a bounce 1 and then pop 2. I love that this pops any 2 cards, face up or face down. Really, really powerful card. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some Dragon decks splashing him in as a 1-of. And I think this is the last one here. Oh no, I'm sorry. So this card searches, this is like the next channeler. We have the Wind one. It's a mediocre searcher. I feel like this kind of falls in that category again. But I feel like I might as well mention it for stuff like the Vernasylphs or the Vernalizer fairies, those really heavy earth decks. We could easily see a card like this end up being a nice consistency piece in those decks, even though it is a -1. It's an interesting, somewhat open-ended search for an earth monster, so it's worth mentioning to me. And then Moray of Avarice. This card banishes a face-up fish, sea serpent, or aqua you control to draw 2 cards. Pretty interesting. I know we don't have any decks that are like too broken with those types right this second, but I do feel like down the line we could see some decks come out where this card just seems like absolutely crazy because they're just too good at spamming the board, and then this card's just drawing you 2. It could be a thing, but it is a reliant draw card. You can't just fire it at the beginning of your turn, which is obviously the downside, but it's interesting for sure. And that'll do it. That's pretty much everything I think that will have like an impact on the format. There is some big stuff, man. 2 new meta archetypes, 2 to 3, probably even 4 of these archetypes that are getting just support in general are going to like a truly competitive level. Like P.U.N.K was already there, but like Exosister, Rikka, and like all cyber decks that can play circular, like all jump a level to me, which is really awesome to see. And then some of the generic cards too. Artemis Slay, crazy. We might even see Karikara see some play because there are going to be some decks that try to play on your turn. I'm really curious to see how much this changes the format. Like this card being splashable in a lot of different decks that just have level 2s in them. This guy being crazy. This is a pretty good trap card for like trap decks, which I love. I love it when we have these new archetypes that are not necessarily trap based, but Konami says, here's a bone, you know, Ice Dragon's Prison in a random set, like awesome new trap card. This card, awesome new counter trap for trap decks, if that's what you like. Like I love it when Konami sneaks cards like these in there, just like here, you know, trap tricks, stuff like that. Really, really cool. But I can't wait for the format. It feels like we've kind of been dealing with the same kind of bunch of decks for a little bit. I'm excited to see how this changes things. And then in a month, we're probably going to have a ban list too to also keep things shaking up a little bit. Even though I don't think a ton of stuff will get hit on that. We might get some stuff off, you know, maybe a little Heart Pour, maybe a little Colossus. We'll see. But yeah, I'm out of here for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, sub to the channel if you want. And also follow me on Twitter. Do that. But I'm out of here. Peace.